Hello friends, my name is Anil Gupta. I am serving as a professor in Department of Physiology and Biochemistry. Today I shall share with you important and relevant high-yielding points on an important clinical condition in physiology, that is edema. And if I define edema, so edema can be defined as accumulation of fluid in body tissues. Is I put down over here edema or edema is the accumulation of fluid in body tissues. Here important points in the sentence which I have just put down is accumulation and fluid in body tissues. 3 points in a single sentence are quite important if we grasp the concept of edema. Edema is a clinical condition characterized by is accumulation of fluid in body tissues. First is accumulation. What's the criteria of accumulation of fluid? Accumulation means, does it mean the fluid is not present in tissues where now it is accumulated? No. So fluid is present in body tissues in mainly 2 compartments. Is an extracellular compartment and intracellular compartment. As a fluid is called extracellular fluid and intracellular fluid. Is overall in a body of a healthy person, is an hypothetical person, hypothetical adult male with body weight 70 kg, around 70% of body weight is total body water, and this total body water plus organic solids plus inorganic solids is together constitute body fluid, with sodium ion as the prime ion in extracellular fluid, whereas potassium ion is the chief ion in intracellular fluid. It is a basic characteristic of fluid. So here is a body fluid. The body fluid is the total body water plus the organic and inorganic solids which are distributed in the proportion of 70%, 65 to 70%, subject to variation, gender, season, fluid intake, health condition of body, disease state, hormonal balance. These are multiple factors. But overall, here I assume it to discuss with you is in 70% of the body weight is the fluid, that is 70 kilogram body weight. The body fluid comes out to be around is fluid in body. And as far as the distribution of body fluid is distributed in 2 main compartments, is an intracellular compartment and an extracellular compartment, and the proportion goes to about intracellular compartment carries 55% of total body fluid where extracellular compartment carries 45% of total body fluid, is the first demarcation, is the first distribution of the total body fluid. And further, extracellular fluid, which is 45% of total fluid, is differentiated into three compartments further. Around 70% of extracellular fluid is interstitial fluid, and around 25 to 30% is the intravascular fluid or plasma, and remaining 2 to 5% is transcellular fluid. Here the question is accumulation of fluid is the criteria. We are discussing the criteria of accumulation. Which criteria determines the accumulation of fluid in body tissue? Here, as far as the extracellular fluid compartment, it carries, again I will conclude with the important points. Extracellular fluid correspond to around 45% of the total body water, one thing. And in this fluid is further demarcated predominantly into the plasma and interstitial fluid. And if I utilize the third slide, here is capillary lined by single layer endothelial cells. And it carries blood corpuscles and the plasma. Here I will declare it to be plasma, and the plasma is about 30% of the extracellular fluid, and here are the cells. With intercellular fluid. Is an intercellular fluid, interstitial fluid, which form about 70% of extracellular fluid. Now I would say the fluid two types. One is a plasma inside vessel and interstitial fluid outside the vessel, that is in between the spaces in the cell. Plasma and interstitial fluid, there is an single layer intervening barrier. So I would again repeat it. There is a endothelial layer, thick, single layer thick barrier between the plasma on one side and the interstitial fluid on the other side. So their proportion in healthy condition amounts to around 30% as well as 70% of extracellular fluid. As far as these two proportions in their respective chambers are appropriate, the fluid balance of the body is normal. So any factor which contributes to irregularity in the proportion of fluid, that is a fluid from plasma from the vessel leaks out, and it, if not reabsorbed back into the capillary, leads to accumulation of fluid in the interstitial area, which is a burden in the interstitial area and will lead to accumulation of fluid into interstitial spaces, resulting into edema. This is called extracellular edema. This is in brief. I have just tried to explain the pathophysiology of this edema. So first slide in the definition, yes, I have myself pointed to the 3 points is accumulation. Does there any criteria? Is there any criteria to account for accumulation? What is accumulation? Accumulation over here, I conclude, is any disproportion owing to the factor, which can be any factor: inflammation, infection, liver cirrhosis, heart failure, increased capillary permeability, presence of endotoxins, poor nutrition, inflammation, disruption in the drainage of lymphatics, can either independently or in an interplay pattern contribute to disproportion in the amount of fluid in vessel and in the interstitial areas, leading to leakage of fluid from the vessel and accumulating into the interstitial area, lead to edema formation, extracellular edema formation. And briefly, if I discuss with you the pathophysiology, and so 2 more points are remaining, as I think the 2 other points which I had pointed to, underlined, are explained, already explained. Is another is fluid. What is fluid? Is total body water plus the solids, organic and inorganic, together constitutes fluid in body as well as in body tissues. Accumulation of fluid in body tissues. Which tissues? In case of extracellular fluid, the tissues involved are interstitial tissues. It is an accumulation of fluid, leaking of fluid from plasma, from vessels, passing through the gaps in the capillaries and getting it accumulated into the interstitial areas will result into the edematous condition. It can be edema of feet, ankle, extremities, face. When edema over the capillary bed in abdomen leads to ascites, and generalized edema is anasarca. And important points regarding the pathophysiology of intracellular edema is pathophysiology of cellular or intracellular edema. Here, fundamental factors are inflammation, infection, and poor nutrition. So timing, I would say, is, and poor nutrition is the most important, crucial, critical causative factor in the pathophysiology of cellular edema. How does it manifest the cellular edema? So poor nutrition can be decreased intake of nutrients. Nutrients can be macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, and lipids, predominantly poor intake of proteins, or micronutrients, including vitamins. It contributes to poor nutrition, or is a loss of nutrients from body. Will also contribute to poor nutrition of body. Overall, this poor nutrition in human body leads to impaired biochemical, metabolic, and endocrinal regulation. But most important is the poor nutrition results into impaired electrolyte homeostasis. And the important of the impaired electrolyte mineral homeostasis is, I would say, the homeostasis of sodium ions, which are predominant in extracellular fluid. How does the impaired sodium homeostasis is translated into, replicated into cellular edema? So here I would have this flow chart is poor nutrition, impaired electrolyte balance. As a consequence, two things are important. An impaired electrolyte balance is manifested in the form of decreased ATP synthesis in cells. As a consequence, the sodium, potassium, ATPase, called sodium pump, is responsible for efflux of sodium ion and influx of potassium ion. It helps to pump sodium ions, and inward movement of potassium ions is maintained in healthy condition. It helps to maintain a normal electrochemical gradient across the cell membrane. Due to poor nutrition, electrolyte balance is disturbed, energy balance is disturbed. Consequently, ATP synthesis from mitochondria is disturbed. As a result, sodium potassium ATPase pump activity, which is based on the consumption of ATP, is hampered, derailed. As a consequence, sodium pump is disturbed, and there is accumulation of sodium ions inside the cell, which invites further the entry of surplus water from the interstitial area to inside of cell, leading to cellular edema. And through these two slides, I would conclude that the edema is the abnormally accumulated fluid in tissue, is manifested in body tissues as edema, which can be cellular edema due to poor nutrition, inflammation or infection, or it can be due to multiple factor induced extracellular edema. Hence, thank you, my friends.